that if I share my screen, we've got the sharing going on. And let's see if I've got everything that I wanted here. This looks good. All right, I'll stop the share. So I see a number of you that are returning people, and I may even see a couple new names. If there's anybody who's new, feel free to tell us how you found out about the classes and what you might be interested in hearing about. Tonight, we're going to be talking about overweight, the obesity epidemic in our country. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of videos with you. Scott will be logging in a little bit later. But is there anybody new to the class, first time perhaps? And if so, how'd you find out about the classes? You can just unmute and say hello. So maybe I just don't recognize everybody who's attended the classes in the past. That works out okay. So let me approach this a little differently. Let me see if anybody has any questions. Who's been in these classes before? Anything that you'd like to share with the group, or, I've got a lot of stuff that I want to share with you today, of course. And at the same time, I'd love to hear what your comments are, if you have any right now up front.
There's Hank.
Hey, Hank.
Hey, I had some surgery yesterday, and while they were prepping me, I was laying there in the bed, and they were looking at my blood pressure and such, and they remarked that my blood pressure is really good for somebody my age, I guess. And one of the other nurses said, "Oh, he's on a plant-based diet." So that's a good sign.
Well, you made an impression with them, at least with that nurse, and that's wonderful. That's what we love to hear. So thanks for sharing that story. That's how word of mouth kind of, is where we're going with this, one person at a time. All right. Anybody else have anything that they care to share?
I had a quick question about exercise.
Okay, lead on.
So I've been doing a routine for the past 2 years, like high intensity, about 10 minutes, is about all I could do before my asthma was just like, no, you got to sit down. So I switched to low intensity, and I'm doing up to 30 minutes of just stair stepping up and down on like a cinder block every day, 30 minutes. Is that enough?
In my opinion, yes. You don't have to be grinding your body into the ground. Moving regularly throughout the day is much better than, wearing your knees out and those sorts of things. Sitting for long periods of time is not really a healthy choice, but whatever exercise or movement you can do in your life is good. My dad lived to 99 and a half, and he danced. That wasn't any grueling kind of activity, but he never ran anywhere, or I never saw him break out in a sweat. And the studies seem to indicate that what you choose to eat is probably much more important in the long run than how you beat your body into the ground. So just do exercise that you enjoy doing. And if stair stepping works for you and you're able to do more of it, then that would be what I'd encourage you to keep doing.
Okay, cool.
If you could do that in nature, like climbing a mountain or, going camping or whatever it is, that would be even better. But, it's whatever you're able to do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I know going camping, Eureka might not like that because he or she would think, well, you know, I want to fly up in those trees somewhere, and that would be kind of hard. Have to keep a rope on her neck. And she doesn't want her wings clipped, I wouldn't imagine. Diane, thanks. How about Diane David?
Yeah, hi, Dr. Voss. I was recently diagnosed with C. diff and just started a 10-day course of vancomycin. And I'm worried it's going to wipe out my microbiome completely. And I'm just not sure if there's anything I could do during this course of therapy to replenish my gut flora.
Yeah, so you definitely want to get rid of the C. diff. So taking the course of vancomycin is pretty much the standard therapy. And yeah, a good percentage of your microbiome may be wiped out. If the ideal solution would have been is if you could have taken a little bit of stool and put it in a capsule and froze it, put it in the freezer, and then swallow it after you're done with the vancomycin, that would have been probably the ideal therapy. I don't know how much the vancomycin might interfere with trying to preserve your own stool if you did that now, if you've already started on the course, it sounds like. Yeah. I don't have statistics to know the answer to that question. One day we might, but I wouldn't worry about it because the vast majority of people do regain their bowel flora and their microbiome. And the way you'll repopulate your microbiome will be with whole plant foods that contains natural bacteria, and you know, your colon will get repopulated over time. You may use a little fermented foods like a little kimchi or sauerkraut or something like that. But you don't want to use too much. And the one study I know in Israel where people took probiotics, it tended to delay the return of a patient's normal microbiome because it populated their colon with bacteria that weren't necessarily normal for that individual. And it kept the normal individual bacteria, it kept them at bay because they, you know, were populated up so much with this probiotic. So I wouldn't worry too much about taking probiotics. I would just eat a little fermented food. I'd eat your regular whole plant-based foods and not to worry about it. That's my thought.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anybody else have concerns? And in the future, yeah, Dottie, you'll next. In the future, talk it over with your doctor when they write for an antibiotic and say, hey, you know, I don't want to knock out my intestinal flora. Have you seen any studies that show that you could kind of take a little bit of stool sample, put it in a capsule, freeze it, let's say, and then use it? I don't have that study in front of me, but I do know that they have done some studies that they take stool samples. I'm not sure how they prep it is where I'm a little uncertain at this point. I'm keeping my ears and eyes open though.
Intriguing.
Okay, got it. Next.
I was wondering about kombucha.
Yeah, kombu. Well, kombucha. That is a fermented product, and that probably would be okay. But again, you don't want to overdo it. A little bit is enough. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well,
Charlie.
Oh, hi, Scott.
Hi.
So good to see you. So I want to go ahead and get started. We've just had a few comments. We'll see if there are any other comments that anybody has. Anything else? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, but wait, before I share my screen, I want to tell you that I got angry. What did I get angry about this last week? Does anybody know?
Obesity?
Yeah, it was the obesity news by the American Academy of Pediatrics. It made me angry. What the American Academy of Pediatrics, they came out with a statement that was promoting something that made me happy. It made me happy to hear that they were promoting, I believe it was 26 hours of intensive lifestyle choice changes in nutrition and exercise. And they recommended that all kids, the ages 6 and above, who are overweight, along with their families, should be engaged in 26 hours of intensive training and classes and education over a year's period of time to help them reduce their overweight. And even down to the age of 2, that means probably the families of the kids who are down to the age of 2, because a 2-year-old, it would probably be pretty hard to give them intensive education. But anyway, the principle of that was all well and good, and it made me happy and excited, like, okay, they're finally getting it. Until I got to the next section. The next section is what made me angry. They said at age 12, if you've tried these lifestyle changes and they haven't worked, then go ahead and put them on Ozempic, or one of those drugs that is $13,000 a year, plus or minus a bit. So give them a pill to deal with this issue instead of double up on your efforts at lifestyle changes. And then if that doesn't work, when they become 13 years of age, send them to a bariatric surgeon and have them have a surgical procedure at age 13. I guess, I understand the concept that if a child has reached the age of 12 and 13, the likelihood of them reversing their diabetes under our current climate is pretty minimal. But it's pretty drastic to resort to pills and surgery at that age instead of resorting to another drastic idea. Like maybe we could stop subsidizing the crap that we sell and serve at the schools, the processed foods, the meat, dairy, and eggs that are being promoted for our school children. Maybe it could be something drastic like, actually have some intervention, legal changes like we used with smoking cessation. And over time, the population that is smoking has dramatically reduced. They didn't resort to cutting out teeth or the patient's tongue to stop people from smoking, like they're kind of proposing with the food issue. Pretty drastic, made me angry. At that point, I said, okay, I have got to do something different with my life now. This is getting serious. So I went to my school in Lebanon, the medical school, and I started talking around to the different professors and to the vice dean and to the curriculum committee, insisting that we have got to do something different than what we're doing in terms of training the next crop of medical doctors. And that means incorporating the lifestyle medicine choices like we're promoting in these classes, Scott and I are promoting. And actually they said they're interested. So it's on the table, and over the next few months, we may see if it gets incorporated into the curriculum at the Osteopathic Medical School in Lebanon. So that's just a quick little story of what happened in my life over this last week. Any thoughts from anyone?
I just saw there's a new restaurant opening on Coburg Road. The name is Killing Burgers.
In other words, the truth is often said in jest.
Killer. It's Killer Burger. Yeah.
Killer.
Killer Burger. It's
Yeah.
almost like the restaurant called Toxic wings and fries, the one that was in Valley River Center, and I think still is. I don't know. Yeah. So, like my dad used to say, the truth is often said in jest. All right. So, what are we going to do about this? We're going to look tonight at what some of the issues are. Scott is going to reinforce that again and go into whatever bit more detail. I'm going to brush upon some things that he's going to talk about next week. There will be some overlap, but it's good for you to hear this more than once. So let's start out with, is the obesity paradox real or a myth? So many of you may not have heard of any obesity paradox, but let's go ahead and check it out. Here we go. First video.
Martin Luther King Jr. warned that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable, and the same may be true of the human lifespan. In the 1800s, life expectancy was less than 40, but has been steadily increasing over the last 2 centuries, gaining about 2 years per decade. That is, until recently. Longevity gains have faltered or even reversed. Thanks to the obesity epidemic, we may now be raising the first American generation to live shorter lives than their parents. The downward trend in longevity is expected to accelerate as the current younger generation, who started out heavier and earlier than ever before, ages into adulthood. If the obesity epidemic continues unchecked, current trends signal a potential looming social and economic catastrophe. In the coming decades, some predict we may lose 2 to 5 or more years of life expectancy in the United States. I mean, to put that into perspective, a miracle cure for all forms of cancer would only add 3.5 years to the average American lifespan. In other words, reversing the obesity epidemic might save more lives than curing cancer. The evidence of being overweight increases your risk for debilitating diseases like diabetes is considered indisputable. But surprisingly, there's controversy surrounding body weight and overall mortality. In 2013, CDC scientists published a meta-analysis in the Journal of the American Medical Association suggesting being overweight was actually advantageous. Yes, grade 2 or 3 obesity, like being average height, 5'6", and weighing about 215 plus pounds, was associated with living a shorter life, but grade 1 obesity, between about 185 to 215 pounds at that height, was not, and just being overweight, 155 to 185 pounds, appeared to be protective compared to those who were normal weight, 115 to 155. The overweight individuals, BMI 25 to 30, appeared to live the longest. Headline writers were giddy, right? Being overweight can extend your life. Dreading your diet? Don't worry, plump people live longer. Extra pounds might mean lower chance of death. Not surprisingly, this study ignited a firestorm of controversy in the public health community. The study was called ludicrous, flawed, misleading. The chair of nutrition at Harvard lost his cool, calling the study really a pile of rubbish. Fearing the food industry might exploit this study in the same way the petroleum industry misuses controversy over climate change. Public health advocates can't just dismiss data they find inconvenient, though. I mean, science is science. But how could being overweight increase the risk of life-threatening diseases, yet at the same time make you live longer? This became known as the obesity paradox. The solution to the puzzle appears to lie with 2 major sources of bias. The first being confounding by smoking, right? The nicotine in tobacco can lead to weight loss, so if you're skinnier because you smoke, well, then no wonder you'd live a shorter life with a slimmer waist. Right? The failure to control for the effect of smoking in studies purporting to show an obesity paradox leads to the dangers of obesity being grossly underestimated. The second major source of bias is reverse causality. Instead of lower weight leading to life-threatening diseases, is it more likely that life-threatening diseases are leading to lower weight? I mean, conditions such as hidden tumors, chronic heart and lung disease, alcoholism, and depression can all cause unintentional weight loss months or even years before they're even diagnosed. It's normal to be overweight in this country, right? So people who are abnormally thin, in other words, ideal weight, I mean, could actually be taking care of themselves, right? But maybe heavy smokers, elderly and frail, or seriously ill with weight loss from their disease. To put the obesity paradox issue to the test once and for all, the Global BMI Mortality Collaboration was formed, reviewing data for more than 10 million people from hundreds of studies in dozens of countries, the largest evaluation of BMI mortality in history. To help eliminate bias, they omitted smokers and those with known chronic disease, and then excluded the first 5 years of follow-up to try to remove from the analysis those with undiagnosed conditions who lost weight due to an impending death. And the results were clear. Being overweight and all grades of obesity were associated with a significantly greater risk of dying prematurely. So adjusting for these biases leads to eliminating the obesity paradox altogether. In other words, the so-called obesity paradox appears to be just a myth. Indeed, when intentional weight loss is actually put to the test, people live longer. There are bariatric surgery studies, like the SOS trial, that show weight loss reduces long-term mortality, and randomizing people to weight loss through lifestyle changes shows the same thing. Losing a dozen pounds through diet and exercise was found to be associated with a 15% drop in overall mortality. Now, I mean, exercise alone may extend the lifespan even without weight loss, but there also appears to be a similar longevity benefit of weight loss through dietary means alone.
So I hope you got the last sentence on that. Dietary means alone. That could be diet and exercise combined together, but it didn't necessarily mean pills or surgery for dealing with this. I want to go on to do a quick share the screen, and maybe I can have you, Scott, do it, and I'll keep my place here if you have access to go to the website and show them how to access that video. Is on obesity. Do a search on nutritionfacts.org.
Oh, sure. You gotta stop share. Well, you're not able to go to the.
I could. I just have to close the other thing down. And
sure.
You're so facile,
Yeah.
easily dealing with that. So he's going to nutritionfacts.org, and when he gets to the nutrition facts, he's going to do a search in the search bar in the middle at the top, and it's going to be obesity. And then he's going to see under the obesity, there's going to be, is the obesity paradox real or a myth? Do you all see how to get there? For those of you who are new, I'd encourage you to check it out. Check out Dr. Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org. Listen to a video once a day, like I used to do when I was first transitioning, and it will help set your mind in a direction that is using evidence-based medicine instead of myth to make decisions as to how you might want to transition for your health. Any questions on that from anyone? I'm gonna thank you, Scott. I think we're good with that. I'm gonna just go back to the gallery view and see if there is anybody on here who has a question about that. No questions? If you have a question, just unmute yourself and speak up. I want to make a quick little blurb about some of you who may be new to the classes and think, oh, I've got to change my whole life and I got to do it tomorrow, or I'm a bad person. Put that thought out of your mind. We're sharing the science with you as best as we know it. We want you to have access to all our resources, and they're on the website, and we try to show you where you can go yourself, just like we did as we were learning about this. We've come to trust sources that are not selling information, trying to sell a product or selling a product that is encouraging you to eat something or take something or buy something from them in exchange for this information. We want it free for everybody, and that's what these classes are. And, we have different approaches. Scott and I are kind of not like two peas in a pod, but we are kind of like fraternal twins. We may have come from a similar root grounding in our educational process. I kind of went into this all at once over a couple-day period of time, as you would have learned from the introduction. And Scott has been he came into it a bit more gradual. And so there are times when I can be fairly aggressive about talking with people, particularly if they are, having chest pain and doctors recommended they have an angiogram, and I'm trying to convince them to try something different with their diet first. I would tell them, tonight, throw out all the animal products, all the processed foods, eliminate all the excess fats, and do what Dr. Esselstyn in How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease says to do, and don't be moderate about it. Do it now, do it completely, do it like I did it. That doesn't mean that everybody has to do that. If you're trying to get off of pills for diabetes or high blood pressure, you may do this gradually over, weeks or even months. This is a choice you get to make. And Scott has kind of promoted that, but he also understands the message the way I promote it. And now we kind of bounce back and forth about, depending on the question and who asks us the question. And I think we're on the same page when it comes to how quickly you have to do this or how much you have to do this. You do it as you want to do it, but if you're not getting the benefits you want, if you're going to ask me, and probably Scott, we're both probably going to tell you then maybe you want to eat a few more plants in your life and a little less of the animal or processed foods. And you might not like to hear that message, but I think that's the message you're going to get. All right. With that said, I want to share with you one of the issues that is fairly common, and that's when people make the decision, I understand this. I want to make the transition in my life. I want to get healthy. So they go out and buy a bunch of salad makings, whatever, the mise en place of making salad. And it's greens, and it's cauliflower, and it's cucumber, and it's all low calorie density foods. And it's so low calorie density, they don't get enough calories. And they are feeling like, oh man, I felt better when I was eating that junk food. I don't have much energy. You want to eat more to weigh less. And so that's what the next video is. And we can maybe discuss that a little further after you see this video. So here we go. Eat more to weigh less.
What happens if you have people add fruit to their regular diet? 3 apples or 3 pears a day as snacks between meals on top of whatever else they were eating. Fruit is low in calories, but not 0, so if you add food to people's diet, even healthy foods, won't they gain weight? No, they lost a couple pounds. Maybe it was all that fiber? If you remember, we learned our gut bacteria can create anti-obesity compounds from fiber. That's why they also had a cookie group. 3 apples, 3 pears, or 3 cookies with enough oats in them to have about the same amount of fiber as the fruit. Despite the fiber, adding cookies to one's diet does not lead to weight loss. They think the weight-reducing secret of fruit is its low energy density, meaning you get a lot of food for just a few calories, so it fills you up. Energy density is a relatively new concept that has been identified as an important factor in body weight control in both adults and in children and adolescents. Energy density is defined as the amount of calories per unit weight of a food or beverage. Water, for example, provides a significant amount of weight without adding calories. Fiber, too. Thus, foods high in fiber and water are generally lower in energy density. On the other hand, because dietary fat provides the greatest amount of calories per weight, foods high in fat are generally high in energy density. The CDC offers some examples of high-energy density foods are like bacon, lots of calories in a small package. A medium energy density food is like a bagel, and a low density food typified by fruits and vegetables. In general, the lower the better, with 2 exceptions. Soda is heavy, so heavy that by energy density it looks less harmful than it is, and nuts have so much fat they appear less healthy than they are. Otherwise, though, the science supports a relationship between energy density and body weight, such that consuming diets lower in energy density may be an effective strategy for weight control. This is because people tend to eat a consistent weight of food, so when there's less calories per pound, calorie intake is reduced. A small drop in energy density can lead to a small drop in weight, and the greater the decrease in energy density, the greater the weight loss. Energy density can be reduced in a variety of ways, such as the addition of fruits and vegetables to recipes, or by lowering the fat or sugar content. And indeed, that's how we evolved, eating predominantly low-energy density foods, such as fruits, vegetables, plants, and tubers, starch-filled roots like sweet potatoes. The first study to emphasize how fruits and vegetables could affect energy density and food intake was conducted more than 30 years ago. Researchers were able to cut people's caloric intake nearly in half, from 3,000 calories a day down to 1,570 without cutting portions, just by substituting less calorie-dense foods, which means lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, compared to a high-energy density meal with lots of meat and sugar. Nearly half the calories, but they enjoyed the meals just as much. They tried this in Hawaii, putting people on a traditional Hawaiian diet with all the plant foods they could eat. Lost an average of 17 pounds in just 21 days, resulting in better cholesterol, triglycerides, blood sugars, and blood pressure. Caloric intake dropped 40%, but not by eating less food. In fact, they lost 17 pounds in 21 days eating more food, 4 pounds of food. But because plants tend to be so calorically dilute, one can stuff oneself without getting the same kind of weight gain. And the energy density of foods is of interest for weight management, not only because it allows people to eat satisfying portions while limiting calories, but also because reductions in energy density are associated with improved dietary quality. For example, lower energy-dense diets associated with lower risk of pancreatic cancer. Lower energy density foods tend to be healthier foods, so we get the best of both worlds.
All right. I want to give you an example of this calorie density, and you'll see different charts. Scott will show you a different one tomorrow or next week, but for this week, this is the one that I'm sharing with you. It's a Chef AJ calorie density chart. They have some slight differences, but this seems to be the one that I was introduced to initially. And it talks about the foods in green. If you eat to the left of the line, you're eating foods like non-starchy vegetables, 100 calories a pound, fruit, 300 calories a pound, unrefined complex carbs, potatoes, legumes, 400 to 600. Notice that these are all foods that contain vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, micronutrients, and bulk. And if you stay eating on this side in kind of a proportion of maybe a third, a third, a third, you're going to get plenty of calories and you're going to lose down to your ideal body weight. If you get up into these foods, these are the standard American diet foods, the refined carbohydrates, ice cream, bread, cheese, those sorts of things. And look at the oils, 4,000 calories a pound. And then the foods that you might think are really healthy, and they're healthy oils, avocados, nuts, and seeds. Yeah, they really are healthy, but again, moderation seems to be a reasonable concept. If you're trying to lose weight, though, look at the calorie density. They're high calorie density foods and don't encourage you to lose a lot of weight. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because Scott will spend more with you next week. And I want to get on to giving you examples of how many calories in a chocolate bar. So let's check this out.
Being aware of the energy density of foods is of tremendous value when it comes to controlling our body weight. And I have this simple little illustration to show you just how important it is. Here I have two food items. Exhibit A, the humble carrot, and Exhibit B, a chocolate bar. Also with me I have two friends, Tish and Heather, who have generously offered to eat and run, or at least eat and walk. Now what we're going to explore is how long does it take to burn off the energy contained within these food items. Now Tish, you get the carrot, and Heather, you get the chocolate bar. Bon appetit. Okay, Tish, you can stop. It's been 5 minutes and you've now burned off all the energy contained within that carrot that you consumed. So you can relax. Heather, even though I asked you to jog, you've still got some time to go. Stick with it. You can stop. Well done, well done. You know, you have been running now for about 27 minutes and you've burned off all the energy contained within that chocolate bar. Now, the reason I got you to run as compared to walk like Tish is that it would have taken you near on an hour to burn off the energy contained within that food item. And the reason being is that a chocolate bar is about 10 times more dense than the carrot. As you can see, the energy density makes a huge difference. And if you're interested in controlling your body weight, opt for foods that are of low energy density. And for the most part, these are whole plant-based foods as grown.
Okay, we're going to stop here. And I'm going to open up. I just want to make one last statement, and that is when people come to me and they say, you know, I'm doing the plant food thing, but I'm hungry. The first thing that comes to mind is, okay, they're used to eating a certain proportion of potatoes. They've been told they shouldn't be eating carbohydrates, and so they keep eating that small amount of potato, or they keep eating a small amount of beans or whatever it might be. And they're not getting enough calories in their diet. So if you're hungry as you're making this transition, you probably have to think, maybe I need to add a little bit more food into my world. And that's why we're talking about eat more to weigh less. And of course, what's so important is the calorie density of your food, which we're going to go over again next week. But I think you have the idea this week. Are there any questions from any of you over this issue? Any thoughts? We try to make this simple so it's understandable, but it, you know, may be a little confusing to some of you who are just starting on this. If there's no questions, then of course I have a question. I always have another question, it seems like. Which is more important? What you eat or how you move? Can you get by eating high calorie density foods and just exercise it all off? What do you think about that strategy? Yes, Ed.
So this is what really sabotaged me last time I did a big diet run is I just kept eating junk, just lessened it. And exercising to like I was using Noom, you know, to track the calories that I take in and the calories that I burn off. And then I was just eating whatever I want, which was junk, you know, and like fatty meats and stuff.
So it was high calorie density foods you were eating.
Yeah.
And then you were saying, I can just exercise this right through it.
No.
Right. Like I've met my limit today. That's it.
And how did that work for you?
I did end up losing like 40 pounds in the end, but it was terrible. I was hungry all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like there's another side to that I didn't get explained to me until I came here. Is that it doesn't matter how many calories go in or how much, it's what makes the calories.
And if you're eating high calorie density foods and exercising them off, and then yet feeling hungry still and starving, it's not sustainable for long term. And so what happens, you wind up in a yo-yo pattern. So many, weight loss, then weight gain, because your body is so upset with you, you just gobble in the calories, and for that satisfaction, feel better, and then your weight comes back, and then you do it again. And after a while, you get kind of discouraged.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I hope all of you have listened to Ed, what he has to say, and that there are various ways of losing weight. What we're talking about when it comes to weight loss is losing weight in a way that is going to actually bring you health, that's going to prevent you from having diabetes or reverse the diabetes, prevent you from having heart disease or reverse the heart disease, not just a short-term fix for your health issues. We are not talking about a short-term fix. We are talking about you really learning to become a virtuoso in your food choices. Just like you're learning to play the piano or learning to swing a tennis racket, we want you to become good at it so it becomes fun for you. And for a while, it may feel a little awkward and you know, a little clumsy, just like learning to play the piano or swinging the tennis racket. But once you do it and you start having fun with it, like we are, I know I am, I believe Scott is, and I believe a number of the rest of you in this class are also, you're starting to have fun with this, feeling better and want to share it with other people.
And Ed brings up a good point. It was the same experience I had back when I was racing bicycles, even way before I changed my diet 10 years ago. Is the only way I could, I always was heavier in the winter and spring months, just always, even when I was riding 10,000 miles a year when I was racing my bicycle, the only way I could climb up the mountains in races well was if I dropped a few pounds. And so the only way I could do that, because I was eating the standard American diet, was to portion control. So I would starve myself. I'd be go on for like a 4-hour bike ride, training ride, and then I would hardly eat anything after. And I'd starve myself because I would drop, 5 or 6 pounds doing that. And then I could climb better in the bike race, but that was not a very fun way to live because I was hungry. And so if I had learned this back then, the concept of calorie density, would have been huge for me, because I could have actually eaten more food, more volume of food, healthier food, and wouldn't have had to be hungry. And I would have been, I'm actually, like 40 pounds lighter now than when I was racing competitively in Europe. And I mean, I could have, now I could like, oh gosh, if I was that much lighter climbing up the mountains and racing, I could have, been even better, better competitor. So that brings up a good point, and I'll kind of hit on those things next week too, about the calorie density, how important it is. Because, you heard calories in and calories out, you get those messages a lot. And a calorie isn't just a calorie, because 300 calories worth of carrots versus 300 calories worth of a chocolate bar, there's a huge difference between those two. They're both 300 calories. You could eat 300 calories of each, but the volume that it would take with each one is completely different. And the effects it has on your body and your health and overall there's so many differences. So it isn't just a calorie. Calories aren't equal, because you'll hear that a lot. Oh, just eat this many calories and you'll be fine. But unless you pay attention and understand the calorie density, you'll struggle.
Thank you. Dave and Cherie.
Yeah, I'd like to probably say a similar thing. I lost my weight before I found out about this group and the plant-based stuff. So I'm learning and modifying what I'm doing. But I watched a movie that basically said, you got to cut out the processed foods because they're designed to addict you and make, you're going to get fat. And what I found is I've done it twice. It worked great the first time, but then our grandkids moved in after a year or two, and I got off track. But I just did it a year ago. And if I cut out processed foods and just stick to like whole foods as much as possible, even if I'm doing meat and eggs also, which I was doing those, but I've cut it back since I found this group. But if I cut out processed foods, my weight just goes down. Just in 2 weeks, I'll lose 10 pounds. And it doesn't come back. Since May, I've lost about 40 pounds. Well, I lost it in like 2.5 months, and I've kept it off by just simply not eating processed foods. And since I found this group, I've cut out a lot of the meats. So all the red meats pretty much, and I'll eat salmon occasionally. And most of the dairy, I drink almond milk, and a lot of the eggs and stuff like that. But
You don't eat eggs.
I can't exercise my way to lower weight, especially not at my age. Maybe when I was 30, I could. But I find that, if I went on a traditional diet where you just count calories, you don't eat enough to have enough energy to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, by doing this and going more to the plant-based, I do have the energy, and the weight just comes off. It's not something I have to really do. And I'm not hungry at all either. You eat enough that like you've been saying, you're just not hungry. But I had to first lose the weight before I could start exercising again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Edward.
So adding on to, or just to comment on that, with a similar experience, when I was dieting like that, I hit a plateau and just could not break through it. And so that's when I decided I'm done dieting. And I started watching these classes in January of last year. And since then, I've gone 20 pounds below that plateau, and I'm not dieting. I'm just eating different stuff.
Now that is a story that's music to our ears. Congratulations. We're thrilled for you. And thanks for sharing that with the class. I do want to play the next video now, and that's on exercise. How much exercise to sustain weight loss? This is a Greger video. And so let's see what the science has to say about this issue. And it's how much exercise, here it is right here.
Right now, almost 2/3 of Americans are overweight, and by 2030, more than half our population may be clinically obese. Childhood obesity has tripled, and most of them will grow up to be overweight as well. The United States may be in the midst of raising the first generation since our nation's founding that will have a shorter predicted lifespan than that of the previous generation. The food industry blames inactivity. We just need to move more. But what is the role of exercise in the treatment of obesity? There is considerable debate in the medical literature today about whether physical activity has any role whatsoever in the epidemic of obesity that's swept the globe since the 80s. The increase in calories per person is more than sufficient to explain the U.S. epidemic of obesity. In fact, if anything, the level of physical activity over the last few decades has actually gone up in both Europe and North America. This has important policy implications. Yes, we still need to exercise more, but the priorities for reversing the obesity epidemic should focus on the overconsumption of calories. To work off the increased caloric intake, which for kids is like an extra can of soda and small fries compared to what they were eating back in the 70s, and for adults like an extra Big Mac a day, to work that off, we'd have to walk like 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. So exercise can prevent weight gain, but the amount required to prevent weight gain may be closer to twice the current recommendations. Public health advocates have been experimenting with including this kind of information. The fast food menu labeled with calories and the number of miles to walk to burn those calories appeared to be most effective in influencing the selection of lower-calorie meals. Now, exercise alone may have a small effect, and that small effect can make a big difference on a population scale. A 1% decrease in BMI nationwide might prevent millions of cases of diabetes and heart disease, thousands of cases of cancer. But why don't we lose more weight from exercise? It may be because we're just not doing it enough. I mean, the small magnitude of weight loss observed from the majority of exercise interventions, where they make people exercise, may be primarily due to how low the doses are of the prescribed exercise. People tend to overestimate how many calories are burned by physical activity. For example, there's this myth that a bout of sexual activity burns a few hundred calories. So hey, you could get a side of fries with that. But if you actually hook people up and measure energy expenditure during the act, and your study subjects don't get too tangled up with all the wires and hoses, though it may be nearly the metabolic equivalent of calisthenics, given that the average bout of sexual activity only lasts about 6 minutes, a young man might expend approximately 21 calories during sexual intercourse. Of course, he would have spent roughly 1/3 that just lying around watching TV, just basal metabolism. So the incremental benefit is plausibly on the order of 14 calories. So maybe we could have like 1 fry with that.
Yeah, so Dr. Greger has a way of adding a bit of humor to this all. And I do want to play the next video, which is one that has impressed me for years. Thousands of vegans studied. Now listen closely to, even if you're a flexitarian, eating meat just a few times a month, what that does to your overall weight. Check this out.
So how do you prevent it? The first study in human history of thousands of vegans was just published in the Journal of the American Diabetes Association. Thousands of U.S. vegans studied for the first time ever. First, let's compare weights. A BMI over 30 is considered obese, between 25 and 30 overweight, and they used to call under 25 normal weight, but it's no longer the norm. The average BMI in this country is now 28.8. The first question is, where do flexitarians fall? A flexitarian is a flexible vegetarian who in this study is defined as someone who eats meat once or twice a month, but is basically vegetarian. Where did they fall? 3 choices: heavier than meat eaters, lighter than meat eaters but still overweight, or on average not overweight at all. So do you think they found flexitarians to be fatter than regular meat eaters? Do you think those who only eat meat a few times a month are skinnier than meat eaters but still on average overweight? Or do you think if we cut down our meat consumption that low, our weight should normalize? This is America. Even the flexitarians are overweight. But what about the full-time vegetarians, though? Same basic 3 choices. Do you think vegetarians turned out fatter than flexitarians? Do you think those who don't eat meat are skinnier than those who do, but still, on average, are overweight? Or do you think if you just cut out meat, you'll lose the excess fat? This is America. Even the vegetarians are overweight. But, surprisingly, they are a significantly healthier weight than those who eat meat even only a few times a month. You can see where the trend is going. What if those vegetarians cut out dairy and eggs? Would they lose enough weight to become the only dietary group in North America that's actually not overweight? You tell me. Do you think cutting out dairy and eggs makes you gain weight? Do you think it would make you lose, but not enough to make that cutoff? Or do you think populations need to cut out meat and dairy and eggs to achieve a healthy weight? This is America, and that means only the vegans are, on average, a healthy weight. And that's like a 40-pound spread between vegans and meat eaters, which is pretty dramatic. But maybe it's not their diet. Maybe vegans just tend to exercise more. No, they carefully measured activity levels, and if anything, the vegans in this study exercised less than the meat eaters. Lazy vegans, but still, on average, 40 pounds lighter.
Okay, so I'm going to stop this and see if we have any questions from anybody before we go on. I only have a few more videos. I always have another video, but I'm more interested in your questions and what we can answer for you tonight.
Dolly here. I do have a couple of questions.
Okay, Dolly.
I've been doing this for a year, a little over a year. And every once in a while, Hank and I find ourselves in a situation where we either get home very late from something or we have to eat very, very early before we go to something. And my first tendency is, well, I pull out a plant-based meat, not like a steak or anything like that, but like those crumbles that you can use for ground beef. And I will just add that quickly to something, or I'm trying to stretch out leftovers, that kind of thing. And the trouble is we find ourselves doing that more and more. Do you consider this anything like plant-based chicken or plant-based ground beef or something like that, do you consider that to be processed food, and or is that bad for us?
Yeah. So, Scott, do you want to
Yeah, sure.
deal with that
So,
first? And
yeah,
I want
so
to give you an opportunity.
yeah, you'd have to look at the food label, but generally all those those vegan convenience foods are pretty processed, and they usually have a lot of added oil, which oil is 4,000 calories a pound, so it's the most energy dense food on the planet. So anytime you add oil to something, it's going to really increase the calorie density. So it's, as far as weight loss, it's going to be not going to be your friend. But we consider those transition foods. So if you're healthy weight and you're not on medications and you've achieved your health goals, then having some of those vegan convenience foods can be a convenience when you're in a pinch and things like that. So there's definitely less healthy things you could be eating. It's still better than eating bacon and eggs and sausage and bacon double cheeseburgers and things like that. It's still a better option than that, but it would be considered a processed food, and you'd always be better off throwing in a sweet potato in the microwave if you're in a pinch, and you can open up a $1 can of beans and throw that on there with your sweet potato and some salsa, and that could be just as convenient, just as easy. And everything that I just mentioned there is 500 calories a pound or less. So a sweet potato is about 500 calories a pound. If you put on some beans, that's also about 500 calories a pound. And then the salsa is very just tomatoes and some spices and things. So you could fill yourself up on that with just as much ease as you could the processed vegan food. But in general, yeah, you want to try to avoid those processed vegan products as much as you can, especially if you're trying to lose weight or have other health problems.
Oh, I'm finding too that a lot of us need to watch labels, excuse me, because anything that has vegan on it or plant-based is not necessarily great for us, like the vegan mayo and the vegan this, that, and the other, you find in the freezer and things like that.
Exactly. And
that's what I'm learning.
And you're saving money by what Scott just said. He said, what? Potato. You could throw it in a microwave. It's very convenient to heat up either sweet potato or white potato, any potato. Have it with some salsa, have it with some beans, that sort of thing. Those are whole foods, like they're grown in nature. And they would be dramatically healthier choices and less expensive choices. Now, you may like some spice with it. So have a spice curry, or have a spice Mexican, or have a spice Italian that you can add to the beans or to the potato or whatever if you want different flavors.
Thank you so much. I'm just trying to finite my pantry.
Well, that's why you come into classes. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And it's good for others to hear that. And we also, Scott, we had another request that says, I've been on plant-based meals and I'm not losing any weight. I've done everything right. Yes? I haven't eaten oil. Let's see. I haven't eaten oil, meat, or dairy, or eggs for a month, and I've not lost any weight. Why? I do eat bread. And is that why? So how much bread is the question I have in my mind? And are there any other areas that you're eating that are very high calorie density, like nuts and seeds and avocados, olives? Those have high calorie densities and are best left out of your diet. So that would be my question back to the person who's asking. I haven't eaten.
Yeah. Also processed foods, they could be still eating things that are processed, chips, crackers, things like that, things that are in packages that are going to be really high in calorie density.
I'm not eating any processed food, but I am eating avocados and nuts and seeds.
Okay, so if you look on the calorie density chart, again, that Scott shows next week, or I can show it again this week, you'll find that nuts and seeds are like 2,800 calories a pound, and avocados are 750 calories a pound. If you stick with the foods that are 400 to 600 or less calories a pound, the foods that were under the green line, the non-starchy vegetables, the fruits, the potatoes, the beans, the rice, the quinoa, lentils, you'll be okay. If you eat the avocados and the nuts and in large quantities, you're going to have a hard time losing weight.
Charlie?
Yes.
This is Donna.
Hello, Donna.
Hi. I have a question about what is the ideal body weight? So I've lost 25 pounds. I did a lot of that before I joined the group. I have cut out all dairy. I've cut out all meat. I've cut out all oils. The processed foods I eat, I have a slice of whole grain bread once in a while. But I'm wondering, when I read Joel Fuhrman's book, I'm 5'6". He says my ideal weight is 119 pounds. If I weighed 119 pounds, I would just blow away in the wind.
Well, that may be based upon your judgment of looking at what the average American looks like in this country. If your BMI is above, I think it's between 18 and 25. I don't know, maybe 18 and a half. I don't know, Scott, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, it's officially 19. Anything below a BMI of 19 is considered underweight, but it's, some say, get down to 18.5. So you want to essentially be between 19 and 23 or 24 is where you want to be. But BMI is not the end all. It's not the best tool. It's just the best tool we have. But really, it's just kind of looking in the mirror when we're naked, and do we look like we have excess body fat? Do we have, because the BMI is going to depend on your body size, your body type, your muscle mass. There's going to be a lot of things that go into weight, and so it's really what we're really trying to do is percentage of body fat is what we're trying to reduce, not muscle. So you could actually have a BMI of say 25 or 26, but have a lot of muscle mass and still have a low body fat percentage and still be healthy at a healthy weight. So, but it's still the best overall tool we have is BMI. But even though there are better things to look at for more detail, but the other thing I always like to say when we talk about weight is that, just like Charlie was referring to, that our lenses, our eyes have changed to what we think is normal. So many people will say when they see somebody that's like me, I've had, when I was first doing this, friends and family would say, "Oh, you have cancer. You look thin. You look so thin." My BMI is 23. I'm actually closer to being overweight than underweight, but I do have a lot of muscle because of all the exercise, bike riding and stuff I do. And all you have to do, I always tell patients all the time, to just go back, if you're a movie buff, just go back and watch pre-World War II movies. So go back to like the 1920s, 30s, and even the 40s, Cary Grant, Humphrey Bogart, Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, all those old movies, Holiday Inn, White Christmas, all these old movies. You can watch and watch those movies. Everybody's almost looks sickly thin compared to what you see today. And so because that's normal. What they looked like back then, that is normal. And so now what's normal is everybody's overweight. If you use a BMI of 24, which a lot of people say is now kind of at the bottom end of being overweight, it's almost 90%. I think it's between 85 and 90% of the US population has a BMI of 24 or above. So it's almost ubiquitous. Everybody's overweight for the most part, except for maybe 15% of the population. So what we see as normal has changed, it's been so skewed. So when you see someone that is actually at a normal, healthy weight, they're actually normal, but we think that they're too thin. And so it's just kind of that we have to change. We have to kind of keep that in mind when we talk about weight and BMI.
And if you don't know your BMI, you can go do a Google search, plug in your height and your weight, and you'll see, my guess is that your BMI is probably close to above 20 in just looking at you.
Yeah.
So you're
It's
not
about
under,
20, yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not underweight. You're
No,
not
I
close.
didn't. I'm taking a diabetes prevention class at the YMCA.
Yeah.
And so we're asked to, of course, weigh regularly, but then how much do we want to lose? And I'm struggling with how much do we want to lose? And by the way, I was thinking of you guys when I read in the paper that the Y got a big grant and they're going to be doing, it's all based on health and nutrition and all that. And I think you guys ought to go there and see if you can work with their planning group and get some plant-based curriculum there at the Y. Which,
good thought.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone there?
I don't. Only the person that's teaching my class. I don't know anybody who's got any power. No, but I think they did talk about the planning group that's going to start putting together in what kind of programs they're going to do, because they got a big grant and it's all new, and I think you guys would fit right in.
All right, thank you for that. We'll look into it. Anything else from anyone?
I have a question. What is circulation screening? QuantaFlo.
I imagine that's for peripheral vascular disease, I would imagine. I'm just taking a guess. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is either. Did someone order that on you?
I just had a recent from a nurse that comes to the home, and it says normal body borderline 1.4 to 0.9. I don't know. Oh, the right leg. Okay, the circulation of it probably. Okay.
So it's it's an ABI, ankle brachial index number is what it sounds like. It's one of those examples we talk about disease mongering a bit. So they, the thing you really want to worry about is if you're having pain in your calf muscles when you walk, and then the pain goes away when you rest, we call that claudication. And that's basically when you're not getting enough blood flow to the extremities, and so that's a sign of heart disease, of vascular disease. And so if you're having those symptoms, then you want to see your doctor and get that checked out. But when just as a screening tool, those are because then if that's abnormal, then people will go and get more expensive testing and things like that. But if you're doing it just to try to detect problems, and that's going to motivate you to make a diet and lifestyle change, and that's a good thing. But if it's just like, oh, I don't have that, and so I guess I can just keep eating my burgers and not exercise and smoke and all those things, then it wasn't helpful at all.
I don't have the problem. I walk a lot. Twice a week. I go 10,000 steps. I have the Fitbit watch, and I watch it, how many steps, and usually and my body, BMI was 21.35. So, and sometimes I pig out on chocolate, but it does not do anything on my weight. I go right back on, and I do not eat meat or dairy or any kind, no chicken and no eggs and stuff like that, and no packaged foods. So I go strictly natural things, and I have no problem with gaining weight. I stay with my weight no matter what. Even if I eat some chocolate, it'll go right back to normal. It's not a problem.
It sounds like you're doing great, and don't let them frighten you with another test about your circulation.
Yeah, no. it says right and left leg normal borderline, you know. So, you know, the more I see the doctors, the worse I get. It seems like I'm doing very well on the whole plant diet. I'm very happy with it, and I'm glad I found out. I just read more books because I can read it on my level, not so fast. The videos are a little too fast for me because this is not my language, remember?
Right.
So, yeah, I love to read the books, you know, and what's in there, the vitamins, make sure that what I need, but a lot of vitamins are in the vegetables. So vitamins, minerals that I watch to eat, and very little on the nuts, and maybe half a small avocado, and that's all I need. And then I'm full. But
okay, I want to play just a couple more videos, so I'm gonna kind of transition for a bit. Okay, thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
I'm gonna share my screen again, and we're gonna play. I have two more things that I want to share with you. One is it's cut the calorie rich and processed foods, because you mentioned the processed foods, or they were mentioned in this class. Let's look at this.
The traditional medical view on obesity is summed up nearly a century ago. All obese persons are alike in one fundamental respect: they literally overeat. While this may be true in a technical sense, this is in reference to overeating calories, not food. Our primitive urge to overindulge is selective. People don't tend to lust for lettuce. We have a natural inborn preference for sweet, starchy, fatty foods, because that's where the calories are concentrated. Think about hunting and gathering efficiency. We used to have to work hard for our food. Prehistorically, it doesn't make sense to spend all day collecting types of food that, on average, don't provide at least a day's worth of calories, right? You would have been better off staying back in the cave, right? So we evolved to crave foods with the biggest caloric bang for their buck. If you were able to steadily forage a pound of food an hour, and it had 250 calories per pound, it might take you 10 hours just to break even on your calories for the day. But if you were gathering something with 500 calories a pound, you could be done in 5 hours and spend the next 5 practicing your wall paintings. So the greater the energy density, the more calories per pound, the more efficient the foraging. So we developed an acute ability to discriminate foods based on calorie density and to instinctively desire the densest. If you study the fruit and vegetable consumption of 4-year-old children, their liking correlates with calorie density. They prefer bananas over berries, carrots over cucumbers. Well, duh, isn't that just a preference for sweetness? No, they also prefer potatoes over peaches, and green beans over melon, just like monkeys prefer avocados over bananas. We appear to have this inborn drive to maximize calories per mouthful. All the foods that researchers tested were naturally less than 500 calories per pound. Bananas topped the chart at about 400. Something funny happens when you start going over that. We lose our ability to differentiate. Over the natural range of calorie densities, we have this uncanny aptitude to pick out the subtle distinctions. However, once you start heading towards bacon, cheese, and chocolate territory, which can reach thousands of calories per pound, our perceptions become relatively numb to the differences. No wonder, since these foods were unknown to our prehistoric brains. It's like the dodo bird failing to evolve a fear response because they had no natural predators, and we all know how that turned out. Or sea turtle hatchlings crawling in the wrong direction towards artificial light rather than the moon. Aberrant behavior explained by an evolutionary mismatch. The food industry exploits our innate biological vulnerabilities by stripping crops down into almost pure calories, straight sugar, oil, which is pretty much pure fat, and white flour, which is mostly refined starch, right? First, they have to remove the fiber, because it effectively has 0 calories, right? Run brown rice through a mill to make white, and you lose about 2/3 of the fiber. Turn whole wheat flour into white and lose 75%. Or you can run crops through animals to make meat, eggs, and dairy, and remove 100% of the fiber, right? And what you're left with is CRAP, an acronym used by one of my favorite dietitians, Jeff Novick. Calorie-rich and processed foods. Calories are condensed in the same way plants are turned into addictive drugs like opiates and cocaine. Concentration, crystallization, distillation, and extraction. They even appear to activate the same reward pathways in the brain. Put people with food addiction in an MRI scanner, show them a picture of a chocolate milkshake, and the areas that light up in their brains are the same as when cocaine addicts are shown a video on crack smoking. Food addiction is a misnomer, and people don't suffer out-of-control eating behaviors to food in general, right? We don't tend to compulsively crave carrots, right? Milkshakes are packed with sugar and fat, two of the signals to our brains of calorie density. When people are asked to rate different foods in terms of cravings and loss of control, most incriminated was a load of crap, highly processed foods like donuts, along with cheese and meat. Those least related to problematic eating behaviors, fruits and vegetables. Right? Calorie density may be the reason people don't get up in the middle of the night and binge on broccoli. Animals don't tend to get fat when they're eating the foods they were designed to eat. Now, there is a confirmed report of free-living primates becoming obese, but that was a troop of baboons who evidently stumbled across some dumpsters at a tourist lodge. The garbage-feeding animals weighed 50% more than their wild-feeding counterparts. Sadly, we can suffer the same mismatched fate and become obese, eating garbage too. For millions of years, before we learned how to hunt, our biology evolved largely on leaves, roots, fruits, and nuts. Maybe it would help if we went back to our roots and cut out the crap.
Just had to share that with you. And then there's one last video for those people who find that they're kind of afraid of making a change because they don't want to fail again. You can get this knowledge and really understand the benefits, and yet there are barriers to making the transition. So this is an encouragement to maybe try doing something different and putting your faith in the fact that this can actually work. So here we go.
Well, I would like to issue you a challenge. Do you like challenges? I hope so. This challenge is just for 1 month. Not asking you to sign your life away or make a lifelong commitment. I'm just saying for 1 month, I would like you to conduct an experiment on yourself. An experiment to see what happens if you make radical shifts to the way that you eat and the way that you move. Well, for the next month, I want to challenge you to move as far up the end towards the optimal zone as you're able. And simultaneously, change the way that you move. Break up your prolonged periods of sitting. Engage in moderate intensity physical activity, 30 minutes or more each day if you can. And what I will tell you is the extent to which you make changes is the extent to which you can expect improvements. And there's a particular group of people that I specifically want to talk to. And you'll know that if you're one of these, but there are some of us that need to make substantive changes to our health. You find yourself in a ditch, and you may have been in that ditch for some period of time. And yeah, you've made attempts to get out there, but they may have been small attempts, and it's like sort of taking these tiny little leaps trying to escape. And it actually becomes demotivating after a while. The best way to escape a ditch is to make a quantum leap. And so if you're one of those people that you know that you need to make those changes, I really want to encourage you over the next month as a self-experiment, give this a go. Change the way that you eat, change the way that you move, and you may well discover that this is a journey in a transformation towards living more.
Okay. Any questions? Any comments? We've got a few more minutes and we've been having fun for sure.
Hi, Charlie.
Okay. It's Mary.
Emmy. Hey,
Emmy.
I had something happen to me this morning that kind of shocked me. And so I get my blood sugar every morning. And based on that blood sugar is the amount of insulin I take at night. And I've been running anywhere from 130 to 160 kind of, and I'm always surprised when it's around 130. Well, this morning I took it and it was 94. And I so didn't believe it. I took it on the other hand and it was 104. And I'm sort of in disbelief how it could do that. Just like yesterday, it was 161. This morning it was 4.
So are you type 1 diabetic?
2.
Or type 2? Well, apparently, has your insulin usage gone down over the last number of months since you've been doing this?
No. In fact, it's either if it's not, it's a sliding scale. So if it's not 130, I add a unit. If it's 130 or less, I take away a unit. And I haven't taken away a unit in quite a while. So, I combed today over yesterday's food choices. And it was a pretty good food day for me, but I've had pretty good food days and still come in at 140.
Well, when you mean by pretty good food day, what does that mean? Are you eating foods that are processed? Are you eating totally whole plant foods? Is there?
Yeah, it's no processed foods. Apple. I had some fruit, 2 or 3 servings of fruit. I had some pasta with veggies. Those garden rolls from the Tara Thai.
Yeah, so you've mentioned 2 processed foods, the rolls and the noodles or whatever it is, the pasta. Those are 2 foods that actually don't grow on trees or in the ground. And
the garden veggie rolls are wrapped in rice paper.
Oh, I see so they're kind of like,
they're just garden veggie rolls. They're not fried. They're not boxed. They're
okay. Are you eating any other things that have a fair amount of oil in them, nuts or seeds or?
No.
Well, it's a good sign that you had a bigger drop. That just means you have less insulin resistance, more insulin sensitivity. So it's hopefully if you can keep going in the right direction, the numbers will trend down and you can start reducing your insulin dose.
So I should just go down
how long have you been doing this?
Oh, I forget, a number of months.
Okay, but because your pancreas can recover. If you told me it was 2 years, then I'd say, well, probably not going to recover. But if you've just been at it a few months.
Well, several months. I forget exactly, but it hasn't been 2 years.
Okay. So like Scott says, you're getting less insulin resistance. As you do that, you're going to need less and less insulin.
All right, then. Well, we'll see what tomorrow brings.
That's exciting for you, actually.
It was. I didn't believe it.
Well, I don't know if you've heard Stu Stevens. He's a type 1 diabetic who had diabetes, I believe it was for 20 years, type 1. And he cut his insulin down 1/3 from what he was used to taking, lost 40 pounds, had significant reduction in his insulin resistance after being diabetic for so many years.
Yeah. Well, I did in 2010, I started whole plant-based foods and I lost 85 pounds and reversed my diabetes totally. And then in 2013, I had some serious health issues, which threw me off threw me off of my life for a couple of years, and through surgeries and different things like that. And so I'm, you know, kind of regrouping. It took several years because I was kind of afraid to stay, just to reintroduce whole plant-based foods, high fiber, because I had a colon resection and went from what I was eating and how successful I was to soft, simple foods. It was kind of weird. It was so I had some PTSD about it, and it was a nutritionist who told me that, a dietitian at Heart and Vascular who told me that. And it took me a while to get myself back, but I totally believe in what we're talking about here and what's going on. And I witnessed it myself that it's very possible, but it's been a hard struggle for me this time.
Well,
I was just freaked out about the blood sugar this morning.
Well, if it gets below 100, just reduce your insulin more. You know, it's okay. Just keep adjusting it.
I'll have to call my doc.
Yeah, call your doc, let him know what you're doing, and that he doesn't want, or she doesn't want your blood sugars to get too low.
No. I'm sure he'll give me the right direction.
Good deal.
All right, thanks, you guys.
Yep. Anyone else? So it seems like I don't see any other questions, Scott.
Yeah.
Do you see anything in the chat or anything anywhere?
I just wrote back about the bread, you know, that bread, okay. Whole grain bread's healthy, just a bit high in calories. So if you're trying to lose weight, you know, just got to be careful with it. But
all right.
And we'll talk, much more about calorie density next week. And I'll show some excerpts from Jeff Novick's lecture, and I'll go on the web. I'll show you guys on the website at the start where the videos are and the handouts that I'll go over for class next week.
All right. We had fun as usual with all of you. Thank you for all your input and your questions. And Scott, thank you. And we will catch you next week then, huh?
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey. Good night.